Dice, yeah, ay, ay.
Good day and welcome. I am William, narrator for the FYI I Am Damaged podcast. Nicholas is a traumatic brain injury survivor, mental health advocate, comic book lover and tabletop gamer whose entire life reset on March 15th, 2016, the Ides of March, in the middle of Brain Injury Awareness Month. A late-night ride in a storage lot ended with him impacting a wall, shredding his pelvic ring, crushing his eye socket, and suffering a massive brain bleed that left a 12-day hole in his memory. He woke up having to relearn how to use his eyes, hands, and legs, and rebuild a sense of self that had taken 35 years to create. This is the FYI I Am Damaged podcast. Now a word from our sponsor. Oscar wrote a wonderful children's book called Logan, The Strong-Minded Little Elephant. Check it out.
Meet Logan, the strong-minded little elephant who learns that bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about believing in yourself even when you're scared. In this beautifully illustrated story, friends follow Logan through a colorful jungle as he learns to calm his worries, take deep breaths, and remind himself, I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. It's a story that helps kids, and maybe a few grown-ups too, find courage, mindfulness, and strength in their hearts. Logan, the strong-minded little elephant, by me, Oscar Luna. Available now at all major retailers and my publisher's bookstore, Milton and Hugo. Because it's up to every parent to show that their child deserves to know that strength starts from within.
Nicholas, thank you for joining me on another episode of FYI I Am Damaged. You're a TBI survivor, mental health advocate, tabletop gamer. Take us back to March 15th, 2016. What do you remember about the motorcycle crash, or what were you informed about the accident when you were able to take it all in?
Gotcha. Well, March 15th, 2016, number one, it's the Ides of March, and in Brain Injury Awareness Month, March, so I double jeopardy it. No one really knows what happened. I had a rough separation about a year before, and I was living in my mom's, renting out the basement, so I was living there. Dogs were making noise. Mother said, what's going on? My brother said, I don't know. Tried to call girlfriend, talked to a friend, messaged someone on Facebook, got someone else's number, but they all showed up at the area where I got. So I had a motorcycle license about a year before, and I just got a bike, and I didn't want to ruin it because it just snowed. It was in the first week of March, it snowed, so I didn't want to put it on the road and mess it up. So I had a big storage unit, and fenced storage unit, a bunch of buildings, and I would just ride around at night. So the family came there, nothing was wrong, called the police. It said I can't do anything. One of the guys I know, he broke in, so the cop went in, and then 2 minutes later the paramedics showed up, and I impacted a wall. I separated my pelvic circle. I broke my sacroiliac. I crushed my left orbital. I had a massive concussion, right side brain bleed, subdural hematoma. So I would say just a little bit of trauma. I was never technically I was not I was responsive on the scene, meaning I made noise when they tried to talk to me, but every brain injury is different, and mine, right side, a lot of in and out of not consciousness but awareness of where it was. But I was taken by EMT right to trauma center. So fortunately, Northern Virginia is where I am, and where my wreck took place, is right near a level 1 trauma center, pretty much for like West Virginia and Northern Virginia and parts of DC. But went right in there. They stabilized me, took me right up. They were concerned a bone was going to pierce the brain. Fortunately, it did not. It was just swelling, but I shredded my pelvic circle. So I had no abrasions, or I would have bled to death. There is no question there, because my body lied roughly 4 hours. when they looked at the time between when I was picked up and last time they saw me on camera. So I would say just a little bit of trauma. I have no memory of that, basically it was 12 days. So like there's a 12-day gap in my head, which is, I mean, it's terrifying knowing that there's something missing. People would come to me and I would respond to them when I saw them, but I have zero memory of anything. They had to do multiple surgeries. They did a pelvic stabilization where they put a suture in your pelvis to hold it together. But I was non-weight bearing for 12 weeks, and they had to pull my face down and redo my face. So you can see ear to ear, I have a pretty scar. So I had my face off full of crap. But with a brain injury, you're not supposed to do certain things, and when you're not cognizant, which you're not aware of your surroundings, they had to tie my hands down. I had to tie me down in bed, and if they didn't, like I pulled the staples out of my head, I pulled the intubator out. One time I stood up and urinated on the floor, and I broke the sutures in my pelvis. So now I have a plate holding my pelvis together. So all that, and like I said, for roughly 12 days. And then I remember waking up when I was being transported to a acute rehab hospital. I saw two of everything. I had to relearn how to use my eyes, my fingers, my hands, and regain a sense of self. We can take 35 years to get where we are, but instantly it can all reset. So it's a long process. Still going. It's a long process.
Now you said like my trauma gave me a gift of perspective. What does that phrase mean to you?
Gift of perspective. So again, we all, we get certain. I've had a lot of hardship. Everybody have had a lot of hardships in their lives, different ones. And this was the worst thing that happened to me, and someone else's might be the worst thing that might have happened to them. But, through that, through my journey, before my incident, before my injury, I went to a therapist because I wanted to try to help my ex-wife out. How do I help? And then I found out how to help myself. And my trauma happened, and I, did this. I went to see them, and then literally 2 weeks after I was out of the hospital, she had a heart attack, so I had to stop teaching. So that, that was traumatic. That was horrible. So then I made sure finding a new therapist was the biggest one, and I still see my therapist weekly. But when I would be frustrated at it and be angry at certain things, she would say, well, what good came of it? What good came of it? And what were the gifts it gave? So I always say I would never take one thing away, because I wouldn't be here right now where I am. And I do have a gift of perspective. I see things very differently. And through that trauma, through that hardship, whatever you want to call it, I have been able to focus on what matters more versus what is just there. And so that is my, I say, I saw the world pretty clearly before, but now instead of just seeing, kind of, a good, good way in front of you, now I see everything around me. I see people where they are. I've learned how to really embrace empathy and speak to someone in different levels than they may never have been approached before. And so that has been very good.
So it elevated your perspective in the way you described. Did it elevate any frustrations?
I mean, sure. It's really yes, I won't lie. I mean, so before my injury though, like I said, I went to therapy and I learned a lot about anger and what triggers anger. So anger is considered a secondary emotion. And anger can kind of come out one of three ways. Generally yelling, crying, or physical. That's kind of how anger comes out. But what is the secondary emotion? So for me, it was frustration or belittlement. And nothing's more frustrating than having to have someone, clean up after yourself or anything else in a hospital, or not be able to think right. So I was definitely angry at so much, but I pushed myself to, I would always say, I might as well do it. I'm going to fail anyhow. So I'd always try to push myself. Maybe that was my way of disengaging if I did fail, then it wouldn't be a problem. But I always did that to push myself. So I'm not going to say I didn't want a pity party, but I never really, I never said, why me? Another hospital therapist or another hospital survivor, they've said, why not me? So I've engaged that too. Why not me? If anybody can handle it, it's me. So, and male mental health is definitely, sometimes it's an oxymoron. People don't think it happens, but it is. And, I'm grateful to be able to speak very clearly about my injury, my illness, but I can also speak about what it was for me before my trauma, before my crash, all that compound stuff that created this, person. And then that crash happened. Therefore, I'm mental health. No. I mean, I was already had issues before. Now it had me look at things very differently. I mean, I probably was extremely high function ADHD before, but after my brain injury, it got bad. Like I couldn't really focus. Now, again, right side injury is, right side of your brain controls left side of your body, left side, right side. Right side is also how you see things and some of your compulsory items and trying to be able to relax and try to take things in problem solving. So I needed to step back and slow down and not be frustrated or belittled in my thing. So I would need to, try to take a breath, count to 3 and, do the next right thing.
Now, when you say like belittle, you're belittling yourself, and a lot of people have. Well, it's just a saying when you say a lot of people, but people in that sort of situation, um, how would they? How would you handle that for yourself to give a little bit of tips to those that kind of are in the same space and they're really trying not to put themselves down?
I wish I could listen to my own advice, whatever I say, but I always tell patients that, person to the right or the left, you would be very kind to them. If they were struggling, you would never, be mean to them, but why would you do it to ourselves? So trying to look at ourselves, I actually try to look at myself in the third person. How am I handling this interactions? How am I handling this? Do I like what I see? So I try to mold where I am, to that. It's yeah, it's definitely something. I mean, it's what did I say? I can't make a mistake, but I'm always going to fail was always my mentality. And it was funny. Years later, I had that came up, and I made a wonderful psychiatrist laugh when I said that. Can't make a mistake, but I'm always going to fail. So.
Now, in the hospital, your wife played your Pandora station, and also the music of Lacuna Coil helped you trip the darkness, so to speak, and ride out the pain. What did you discover how music can change pain, fear, or panic?
So, just to clarify, it was my girlfriend who's now my wife. So,
Okay.
appreciate it. Yeah, it was the nurses were freaked out, like, why is he playing this? But she was playing my favorite, my Pandora station, Typo Negative, which had, Opeth, Typo Negative, Lacuna Coil, Within Temptation, blah blah blah. And when the music played, you could literally, like, when I would be going through some pain, I don't call it pain anymore, I call it uncomfortable. My blood pressure was really high, but when my music came on, it literally lowered it. It lowered my blood pressure and it helped me relax. But music was a big thing for me because, again, I had a rough separation divorce, so I would always listen to music while I walked my dogs. So that was like a calming thing that I kind of went towards. So when the injury happened and the hospitalization happened, that was there. And you know every brain injury is different, and that darkness, I joke with, because there is a song they have, Trip the Darkness, and I say it's about the opposite of coming out of a brain injury, because that darkness that I don't remember anything, but I do have that silence of nothing, that quiet, anything else. It's very chilling and very, jarring. So music has been definitely one of the catalysts that's helped me heal, not only right after injury, but heck, almost 10 years later, I'm still listening to music, and I'm talking to the band Lacuna Coil. I'm friends with them, and meeting the fans around the globe, sharing my story. And then after sharing my story with Christina, interviewing her, other people, other fans of the band reached out to me and let them know how trauma touched their lives. I mean, trauma is the number one cause of death between 1 and 45. Now, technically, gunshots are 1 to 17, but that is considered trauma. But 18, 45 is trauma. So it affects a lot more than we know. And when we can find a way to embrace whatever hope we have, be it music, be it a game, whatever it is, it can really fill us. And that in turn, speaking to artists about it it really meant a lot to the band, that I recognized their gift and how much it helped me be where I am today.
Now, you talked about going from isolation to peer mentoring at Inova Mount Vernon and volunteering with Trauma Survivor Network. What got you in this state of I'm ready to help somebody else? And what was the length and time where you were actually ready to start doing that?
At Mount Vernon is a acute rehab facility. So yeah, I was there, was learning to do a lot. They have what's called a peer mentoring program, where former patients, generally stroke, brain injury, or spinal cord injury, come back and talk to patients in the hospital. Well, I was only in that session for like 5 minutes. I was in a lot of pain, again, a lot of discomfort. So they had to pull me out. But I heard a person speak, and they spoke about being a math professor and teaching, but they had a brain aneurysm and didn't know what numbers were anymore, and had to refigure all that. And I was like, I felt guilty. Like, why am I so upset? I just can't relax. I can't calm down. I can't focus. But this person had to do so much. So that was a catalyst I needed to say, that was my perspective change, where I could do it. Like, no, I can do this. So I wanted to do more for patients, so they had that hope. So knowing about this program, I wanted to do this. So you had to do a 10-minute talk to the patients about your recovery, your injury. More of, it's not just your recovery, but also getting back in the community. That's what recreational therapy is about, just so they can navigate that. But I wanted to record it. My girlfriend's like, why do you want to record it? I said, well, your family came up from Florida. These people came from Chicago. I want to do this. So I recorded it, and that is where I proposed. I did this thing, but I say that because my hospital therapists were there at my first speech. So they were at my proposal, and some of those therapists were there at my wedding. So all that stuff that happened was because I was willing to take that chance to try to do something to want to help others and find a way to, again, help myself. I didn't know Trauma Survivors Network. It used to be a different program. It started in Inova, Fairfax, the trauma center I was in, and it was on hiatus when my injury happened. So we didn't really have that support. But I heard about them through a community event at the rehab hospital. And I met with them, met with their social worker that runs it. And then all of a sudden I'm going to a support group. And it's interesting because when you go to every support group's different. I mean, every different wherever someone going through, there's a support group can be something for themselves. And some support groups are listen to podcasts, listen to music. That can be a support group too. But it's nice because when I go into trauma, there's people that have had many different things going on, but we all speak the same language of that isolation, that fear, that trauma, not knowing what up is or down, what knowing is what's next. But we can speak that language, and then they can see themselves. They only see themselves where they are. But I always say, no matter how bad it is, you look down, this doesn't work, this can't do this. We forget to look behind us about how far we've come. So that's kind of where I wanted to do. I didn't want to I know that if I isolate, something's wrong. That's where people should say, okay, if he's not talking, because I know certain triggers about myself. So I do everything else I can do to try to, push forward. I always say, if there's 5 minutes of my day, I'll find 10 minutes of stuff to do in it. So I always try to keep pushing myself. And a lot of that is my own not having confidence in myself. but also it's because, I always say I'm making up for those 12 days I lost because my brain was out. I have nothing. Even though I was there, I wasn't. And losing my ability to problem solve and constructive thoughts and executive function, that's my number one skill I feel in life is problem solving. So if I lost my biggest identity, who was I?
Exactly. And that's the string I like to pluck on, especially with guys, is that I'm not good enough string. And especially when it's compounded with stuff that they go through, events like yours, and just letting them know, like, one, you are enough, and two, what are you doing to put yourself in the present? Because then, like how I was with my trauma, I was always in the past, didn't regard the future, and my present was, I don't even know where. And that's a great thing that you're doing to also help tell them to say, hey, look, where are you? Are you here? And if you're not, how can we get you here? I always like to, in a good way, like, challenge, and then they get to thinking, like, no, like, maybe I am good enough, and that's good. Even if it's a seed, it'll grow into something.
Yeah. When I spoke to Christina from the vocalist from Lacuna Coil in my little interview with her, um, we talked about, again, we talked about perspective because they had a new album that 20 years later, this new album is a remake. And, some people were upset. And she said, you're not the same person you were 20 years ago. And it's the same thing. It's like, okay, I wasn't the same person I was. I'm still the same core, but there's certain things that are different from me. Everybody did some dumb stuff when they were younger. Everybody did some stuff they're not proud of. But also they were really proud of, or struggles they had that they overcame. And I would say, and my wife would say, like, I'm so sorry you went through that. I said, never apologize for something I went through because I'm here now. Whatever I did, whatever was in me to push me to say, I'm going to do it. I did it. That grit is something. I mean, people say you have a lot of strength, a lot of grit. I said, there comes at a cost, but it is also where I am now because of that. And I would never take one thing away because who knows where I would be.
Absolutely. That I definitely receive. Now, you're open about the 15 plus years of anxiety, severe depression on top of the brain injury. How did your mental health journey change after the trauma, and what do you wish people understood about it?
So I was always probably pretty vocal, and I was always, well, I guess before my injury, I probably got more angry than I do now. And I get angry. Everybody's allowed to get angry, but I didn't know how maybe a way to regulate it before. But I would get so angry so angry. But when I was in the hospital, and I would get angry because I feel like I wasn't concentrating, I wasn't focusing because that is a trigger for me. If I get hyper focused, it's something with a brain injury that is going to always be with me. If I'm not able to kind of step back and slow down, I'll just keep going, and I would be angry at myself. Now, everybody's allowed to be angry. Everybody's allowed to have a mistake, except for me. But I would say I was mistaken once before, but I was wrong once before. I was just mistaken. But I digress. Mental, we all got where we are by a lot of different reasons. We all had a lot of crap that happened to us that brings us to where we are now. And it's okay to have crap because everybody does. What I will say for me was it was important to recognize that I did have crap, that I wasn't perfect through it. And I think that's one of the things that I think we struggle the most, at least certain leaders, not understanding that you make mistakes and that you can do it. And I think that's some of the thing is being humble and being brave enough to say, I made a mistake. I effed up. I screwed up. That sucks. But moving on from it and learning from it and going through. And that is what mental health and therapy is for me. It's understanding. I remember, my therapist practices and my old one, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but that's always challenging yourself. Ask yourself the tough questions and try to do it. So I wouldn't let myself off and I wouldn't be there just to bitch about the world. Because, if you, what do they say? If you met an asshole once in the day, you met an asshole. But if you meet an asshole throughout the day, maybe you're the one. Just understanding that. So
Never heard that one.
I got lots of quotes. I'm full of crap and full of quotes and ideas. All depends on what comes out first. But just understanding that, trying to take a breath, see where you are, and accepting that maybe I wasn't, or maybe I can listen and learn a little more. I think that growing up, I mean, I'm a 90s boy. Many of us are, and I think that I was very lucky that I didn't have everything just on our fingertips, information, and we had to search, we had to look it up, we had to go to the library, whatever else. But it also, I think, formed a lot of critical thinking, which is, again, one of the strengths I have. And I also find social media extremely toxic for some reason. I'm still on Instagram because that's how I talk to the band and the fans internationally, but I got rid of Facebook after RBG died because I got tired of all the vitriol on it and I just couldn't handle it anymore. So our mental health is also about our environment, or what we're choosing to take in. If we're choosing the negative, one of the quotes I would say after the hospital: if I don't give negative breath, it doesn't live. If I don't talk about it, it doesn't need to be there. And sometimes I'll get sometimes hyper fixated, or I'll get frustrated at something, and I will amp up, and I can feel it. And some people are like sometimes they'll get nervous, like, oh my gosh, I've never seen you angry like that. That was scary. I was like, there's a certain thing where I get pushed, and I'm like, okay, but it's always to defend others. It's always me. That's one of the things I worry about. I worry about becoming a bully, because I will stand up for someone. I always got to be careful. I don't want to become a bully trying to stand up to someone, because therefore I'm losing the point. And it is important to, again, accept that I could be wrong, accept this person is wrong, and that's okay. And I don't need to change them. And I can just say, you know what? And I always say that now. I was like, when I'm frustrated, I say, there's worse crap in the world. There's worse shit in the world out there. I promise you there is. And saying that is a way for me to disengage anything, because there's a lot worse stuff out there. And I am very fortunate to have healed this well, to be here, to be able to speak, everything else. And I recognize that fortune that I have. And I'm going to make sure I don't take it for granted in any way possible.
No, I get it, and I'm kind of switching gears on how I view my anger, because and I get what you said. Like, I'm a '78 baby, but grew up these and on, and loving all
We're
the
Gen X.
stuff loving all the stuff in the background, because I'll show you later. I got my little shelves I got my comics there and my Legos and everything that my sons and I did, but after going through my journey and releasing, I guess, the major weight of the trauma of what I went through, I'm dealing with everything else that was underneath the surface. Because what you said in previously, it's like, people tend to freeze you in time, especially if they're not around you to grow with you. And I have that done to me. I've done it to other people. And but realizing now, and my point is, it's just, I get to where with my anger, where okay, I'm starting to say it and view it differently, of instead of that was upsetting me, like, why did I let myself be upset by it? Like, what's there? The curiosity, on top of the vulnerability of saying, what, I was upset about that. There's a lot of people who blame their anger on other people, on other situations, on other things. They're too prideful to be vulnerable. And it's like, for me, I feel like that people are doing it a little bit wrong, because when other people see vulnerabilities in others, and it doesn't mean weakness, it shows that, okay, they can face this, and people can see the strength in that. So I mean, it's Definitely about the perspective. So, when I saw that you had the gift of perspective, and how are you changing to see things, like that's something that needs to be pushed out even more to people, to say, you got to look at things a little bit differently.
Yeah,
Now,
it's, I mean, Brene Brown, she said, you can't be courageous if you're not vulnerable. And so that's why I express it, because I say when I do that, it shows others also that I am, I have empathy that maybe don't, because I see things very differently because I will speak about it. And when I've spoken about my trauma in different events, people have talked to me about how trauma affected their life and different stuff. You would have never known, but they talked to me after. Also, former soldiers that were injured or and stuff, they've spoken to me about some of their fears they had, from it. And I can never give medical advice, but what I can tell them, I always say, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad that I'm on your team, because it's a tough road that we all go through, and we don't know what up is or down, and we don't know what tomorrow is. The only thing we can control is our own actions. Control is the biggest lie in the world. But what we can do is we can control our response to the situation. And that is the only way to elevate ourselves from the situation, is to choose our response.
absolutely. And I always take from a quote that I saw on Instagram, and hopefully it wasn't one of those churned out quotes, like those AI quotes or whatever, but it's like, be where your feet are. Wherever your feet are, you got to be with them. You can't keep living in the past and let that go. Future's not cemented. So be where you are. Be where you are. Be where your wife's at. Be where your kids are at. Be where your passions lie. And it's helped me a bunch, because I stopped worrying about the future. It comes when it comes. It'll be ready there for you if it's meant to
Yeah.
be. And the past is done.
Joy is in the present. That's what I've had to learn. I don't believe it. Anxiety is fearing everything in front of you and what's in the future. Depression's essentially, fearing everything that happened to you. But we try to lose surface, where we are. There's an analogy I've said before. My therapist said, you know, depression is being in the tall grass and a lion charging at you, and anxiety is being in the tall grass knowing that there's a lion out there. So I was like, that's definitely the case. And it's hard. I mean, I won't lie that obviously I'm anxious all the time, but I mean, that's just kind of, I'm spun up enough. But I do try to allow myself to, spend time with my dogs, my wife, a game, something like that, to allow me to enjoy what I have in front of me. I won't say I'm not anxious anymore, but I will say that I am able to focus on something, that instead of the growing fear of what is. I mean, you said comic books, obviously, you see my nerd street cred's pretty high, but I would say, the only way to, I don't like anything controlling me. So fear is a form of control. So we learned from Green Lantern that you can, stop fear with willpower. So that's what I do. I have the will, I have determination. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to do it. And just do the next right thing is what I've said. Just do the next right thing, because I promise the next steps are going to be a little bit easier. But that first one is always the toughest, but there. And I saw I wish I still had the pic. I swear I saw something on Instagram too, or a video, whatever, but it was sympathy and empathy. And it was sympathy, someone mourning someone or something, but sympathy was like looking, down on them. Like, I'm so sorry that happened, but looking down. But empathy was walking with them. And I like that analogy. I'm like, I always want to be, I'm sympathetic to people's problems, everything, of course, but I'm empathetic as well. I want to walk to you. I won't do it for you. I can't. But what I can do is be there with you, beside you, and show you that, hey, like, I will be willing to walk this walk with you. And during COVID, a lot of bad stuff happened across the board. And one of my coworkers, he kept saying, like, oh, you really mean you'd help me if I needed it? I was like, yeah. And so he said, can you do this for me? And I was like, sure. And he couldn't believe it. I was like, if I say something, I'm going to do it. I will help anybody. And I was on a podcast a bit ago, and the person was struggling, and I immediately messaged them because they posted on Instagram, and I messaged them and said, "Are you all right? Here's my number. Here if you need it." And again, it's willing to be vulnerable, but also I'm very noble. I try to be able to look at myself in the mirror and be proud of what I'm trying to present and who I want to be. And that's something I strive for every day.
No, I get it, and it's very. I found it difficult in the beginning when you kind of realize, like, if you're a person on your own healing journey and you encounter a lot of people, you encounter a lot of people that are just in grief about themselves, grief about what they've been through, and everything in all form of fashion. And I had a great conversation with a retired therapist for one of my shows, and it was eye opening about grief. It's like, you can acknowledge it, but you can't live in it, and you have to get past it somehow. And I guess everyone's ready in their own time frame, you know.
Um, I everything that we have, like my injury it was grief. It's a grief of something I had that's different. And when I lost my champ, which was the hardest thing I ever went through, like losing my dog. I mean, he was everything to me, and he was there, my first marriage and then divorce and then my trauma, everything else. But I ended up seeing a pet loss therapist before we said goodbye to him. And one of the things she said to me, and I still remember it, it's like, your grief is like an urn. It's there and it's huge and it's massive. Eventually, you see things differently, but the grief is always the same size. It's always there, but the world's just got bigger around it. And that's okay to have a bad day, to grieve that thing, because it is a massive thing. But our world does get bare. And someone said, I always want to be happy. I want to be happy. I was like, but you can't be happy all the time, because otherwise you're not sad. Then what is happy? It's flatline. It's just existing. That is not a life I want to live. I would rather grieve a loss. I would rather grieve something not having, because they also say what grief is where love has nowhere to go. So it's that certain thing that I had and not knowing. So I would rather grieve than have not felt some of it.
Definitely. Now, with part of your recovery, it included tabletop role-playing games. How has being at the table helped you with memory, confidence, and social connection?
Well, like I said, big nerd. But I played a game. It's D&D's biggest competitor, Pathfinder. I played it before my injury. Played it a lot. It was actually one of the reasons why helped me get the strength to get separated, because I would go see friends and I would feel better about myself when I'd go out, and I'd come back and I was like, what did I get into? So it pushed me go. My separation happened, which was awful, and I didn't want to stay at home playing video games, World of Warcraft. I say I'm a WoW survivor. I didn't want to do that crap. I wanted to get out and push myself out. So I started going to different game stores to play games, and I met new people and new environments. And then, of course, my crash happened. So everything's different. It was interesting. Some of my players and GMs, they visited me in the hospital. They were there to help me out where I needed it. And, so going back in to in a gaming environment was very overwhelming. I was still in a wheelchair. The sounds, the lights, it was a lot to take in. But I would say I only moved the pieces with my left hand to make sure I used therapy with it. Right side brain injury is, sometimes your ability to focus on multiple things at once. So, and it's also problem solving. So I can go creative to analytical with my thought, with the characters, with the action. So it really was a way for me to do it. And I was around people that, sometimes gamers feel marginalized. I mean, tabletop role-playing games, very popular since critical role in Stranger Things, but long ago I used to get chased and beat up because I played it. So I used to say I did it for them, but in that, it's nice to be able to say, hey, I was in a rough spot and I was able to game and feel comfortable. So now when I'm at tables and tabletops, I make sure everybody feels accepted. I was never prejudiced versus people before, but gaming in different areas, especially this horrible culture we're in now, sometimes I definitely am grateful to be able to help provide an inclusive environment. I'm with Organized Play Foundation, volunteer, and they again run Pathfinder. So I've literally ran it around the globe. I went over to London to see Liquid Coil, and I played a game over there because it's always available. But when I'm at con, I can give it to anybody, play everybody. I was actually just at a big convention recently, MagFest, Music, Anime, Gaming, and very much it's people are trying to be themselves as much as they can, and it is definitely very. Everybody is accepted. There's a lot of LGBTQ people, a lot of trans, but the nice thing is people are coming together and they're having fun and being okay because everybody come from different environments. When we're at a gaming table, there's something that brought them together. Just like when I meet someone at a concert, the same way. And I actually did a panel at this same convention, 2 weeks ago about tabletop role-playing games and mental health support. And I spoke about it, and it was nice, and someone was listening to me speak, and they've heard of Pathfinder, never played, but then they ended up playing, like, because I talked about it. They ended up playing like 3 games, never played before, and they had a blast. And they said to me afterwards, like, you were right. This is a good community. Everybody, we're trying to cheer each other on for it, and that's the nice thing about this type of game. It's working together for a common cause, and it is being creative. It is being fun. It's being funny or nerdy, whatever you want to call it, but people are able to hopefully be themselves and be in a supportive environment.
And since you were touching on you going internationally, talking to groups, and even addressing members of Congress about trauma and mental health, standing in those rooms, what's one misconception about TBI or trauma you feel most compelled to challenge?
You look okay. Nothing's wrong with you. And that pisses me off more than anything else. So there's someone I care about deeply, and they suffered a TBI in 82. They actually came to my wedding, and it's sometimes hard to understand them speak. I can understand it because I'm paying attention. I'm looking at them. I always learn to look at someone in the eye when they're talking, because then that's the best way. Number one, you acknowledge them, you accept it, and allow them to understand. But again, they had a closed head injury, 46 years ago, 44 years, whatever it is. They have a difficulty speaking because that is how the brain was injured, but they can understand it. And when they have been discounted, like, oh, you're mentally handicapped, this and that is beyond crushing. So I will never do that to anybody. I will always say, there, because I always say I don't like saying handicapped. I like saying handicapable. I've done a lot of, before my injury, I do technology, access control. I did that, but I really learned the value of ADA and the importance of it. And I always make sure that I will support people, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to judge them for it. And trauma, again, takes tons of different forms, but it is lonely. It is, it is hard. I mean, someone in trauma survivors I spoke with as a volunteer, as a support, and they were injured in a car. A car slammed into them. A delivery vehicle slammed into them. So they were on workman's comp from it, and basically the blah blah blah. But they had to see a psychiatrist in the hospital, and the insurance was saying, "Well, that's not warranted. We're not paying for that." I was like, absolutely not. Well, you just didn't have, you had a head injury and you busted your legs up. A head injury is number one. That would make sense with psychiatry. Well, no. So some people think that, oh, well, I don't need to see this, or you're okay, or why don't you just get over this, or have you tried not being anxious? Like, no, I never thought of that. Why did I try? Let me start doing that now. And I think that's people will go to that because they don't necessarily know. And example, I'm very fortunate. I have healthcare. Many people don't have that luxury right now, unfortunately. And when my trauma happened, I had fantastic healthcare and it was covered everything. But I have something now that doesn't have a lot of stuff covered. So right now my therapy is not covered. So I pay out of pocket. And I wasn't going to do it all the time, but I started not feeling good about myself and not feeling comfortable with where I was going. So I did it, and I said, "Screw it! This is my mental health." And it's funny because people at the hospital are like, "Oh, we have therapists," and we have therapists on our network. And I said, "You're exactly right. So let me send a babysitter over your kid's house right now. Let me send a dog sitter to our house." Well, I don't really care. I can choose one for you. No, because you don't want me to do that because you have a safety and concern for your children and for your pets or whatever. Well, guess what? The same thing happened to me after my injury. I don't want to lose something because I don't have insurance for it. And I still go weekly or, as much as I can if it's sometimes life happens, and it's a good way for me to check in with myself. And I'm very proud to know that, through all my healing, I've found different ways to heal myself by helping others. And this has been a nice, new way of doing it, just being on podcasts, speaking to people because my message lives on. I mean, your audience is as big as it can be and it'll grow. And hopefully that our messages will again become more powerful than this. And I would say if I help one person, I guess it was worth it. I helped a lot of people. So when I went to Congress, when I spoke to the different representative staff, we speak about the trauma support and how integral it was to our healing. And I actually ran into my congressional senator, Mark Warner, at an event. And I spoke to him about, here's what I do. I made a little business card, gift of perspective. Here you go. And he actually emailed me and said, I really like the work you're doing. Keep it up. Let us know how you can help Mark. So that was really like, oh my gosh, my senator sent me like, wow, that's crazy. Again, because I was willing to speak out about it, to do it, to show the others there, and to have the level of humanity that people might know. And I'm very well spoken. I'm not trained by any means. I am able to speak. So I make sure that the gifts that I have are used as frequently as I can, because again, I know how fortunate I am being where I am now. And I don't want anybody to feel that they are alone. That's one thing I never want people to feel alone in anything, that there is always someone out there that sees you. My injury told me the biggest lie. I thought that I was invisible. I definitely wasn't invisible. And now I make sure that I'm never going to be not seen just to show others.
And that's one reason I would definitely wanted to have this talk with you because, and I relate to what you said because I've always said that before, where it's like I do a lot of this for me, doing the show for me, what I've been through, how it led me to it, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe this is the universe saying, hey, look, self-heal, because you're going to meet a lot of people, you're on your own healing journey, and it brought me to a lot of different way of thinking where now when I'm posed with something, I'm not limited in how I can react. Because I'm the same way. It's like I got to the point where I'm thinking, okay, if I do get angry at something, okay, my first reaction can be valid, but is it right? And if it isn't, okay, then let's, get the tools to flesh it out and see, because a lot of people would avoid a lot of misunderstandings, and it would help let yourself be understood a little bit better. So it's like if somebody would have a conversation with you, they didn't know what you were going through, and all of a sudden you got upset about something. It's like, approach it differently. Like, kind of curious about that. Like, why are you upset about this? Why are you upset about that? And there's a point where, yeah, you can meet people where they're at, but it's showing that sort of like, yeah, I see you. Like, what's there? We're not talking about the weather. We're not talking about, what kind of car you like, what your job is, or anything like that. But, there's something else there. Like, I'm interested. What's up? Like, let's talk. Let's have a better conversation. It doesn't always have to be surface level. And being understood in that way and being seen that way it makes a difference. It's, I think having that shift, it does really, really help. And talking about individuals who are in that sort of beginning stages, like for someone who's in their early stages of their brain injury or trauma recovery and feel like life will never feel normal, what's something you wish they can borrow from your experience?
Well, there is no normal. It's just a setting on a wash machine. And like I said before, we're very different. Things change where we are, as we grow. I can't, like I said, I can't give medical advice, and I will always, there's only certain things I can say. The only thing I can promise is that the sun will rise tomorrow, and allow yourself to have a bad day, because the sun will rise tomorrow. And when we can do that, it takes power over whatever's going. So, you know what? Screw it. It's going to be a bad day. It's going to be a bad day today. That's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. And hope is a free medicine. Just sometimes having a little bit of hope sometimes is good. And again, it's all that, comic book stuff, because hope was always can power up. It's a little bit of hope can go a long way.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad I was into that, like the storylines and everything. You now being older, you would know they would slip in something to be like, okay, be a good person, have good high moral standings, and do the right thing. And that I loved, from whether it's whacked out stories or something that's just in the same groove. But yeah, I'd be interested to know, do you do anything outside of the therapy, anything that kind of helps? I don't know if like nootropics or anything outside of the normal convention that you were curious about that might help with anything with TBI? Like, is there anything as well? I don't know about that space.
I know there's different organizations like Brain Injury Services that'll help different stuff. I mean, right now, again, so for me, I heal more when I speak about it, and I can find ways to help others, and they might tell me what worked for them. Simple things that are simple, they seem very. Here's a simple thing: count to three. 1, 2, 3. That's a brain injury strategy that someone told me. Just sometimes count to three. You don't have to fill the space. Sometimes just count to three. And again, I love to live by quotes, but the space between stimulus and response is where the power lies, by Viktor Frankl. So sometimes that giving yourself that time to respond is more power than you can imagine. And you take away the power of whatever situation you're going to, because you are taking control of that. That response is your control in that situation. So again, there's tons of things that I've done and I've said that have definitely fueled me to do more. Example, like there's very few pictures of me and my trauma. My family deleted them all, but the only one picture has me holding a horrible comic, not a horrible comic, a horrible picture of me holding a comic book. But in that comic book, it's Thor, the mighty Thor, and it's obviously it was about Jane Foster, who when she picked up the hammer of Thor, she became Thor. Well, if anybody saw Thor Love and Thunder, when Jane Foster had cancer, when she picked up the hammer, it took it away and she was able to be something else. And I said, oh my gosh, I mean, she wasn't chosen because I was injured. Then I was like, oh my gosh, but I actually met Jason Aaron at a convention and I told him that story. And he's a wonderful man, wonderful writer. And I said, someone that's trapped in their own mind, how powerful it is to be able to pick something up and go away. And at that same convention, I spoke to another person about a person I met in trauma who had a Batman bag. And I asked them, I was like, what would Batman, do you like Batman? They said, yeah. But I told the person, I said, what would Batman do? And Tom King, he's a writer of Batman. He picked up a comic book and he picked it up and said, it's okay to be scared. Everyone gets scared. Now is a chance to be brave, Batman. And Tom King used to work with PTSD people, soldiers with PTSD. So again, through my advocacy, through my outgoingness, through my willing to talk to anybody about it, and pulling threads together and finding ways to connect the different stories we all have has helped me, which I believe has also helped others pull something out when they might not know they needed it, or might not understand why this song meant so much to them, or why I cried when I watched Doctor Strange. Why? Because when he was learning how to use his hands after his injury, that was exactly what it felt. I wrote, not that Disney's gonna listen to me, I wrote Disney. I said, this is so powerful as someone that has a brain injury, had to relearn how to use my hands. I can't imagine this. So you have the fear and the frustration really done amazingly. And again, I took inspiration by this, and I gave a chance to others. And I think when people see the vulnerabilities that are around them that they might not know, I think that's a good way they heal, because everybody isn't perfect. And I know the media, social media especially, wants everybody to feel like they are always on, but it's not true. We all make mistakes. We all have crappy days, and it's okay. It's okay to have a bad day. And the difference too is, mental health is now a good buzzword, as we say, right? Every time there's something bad happens, oh, it's a mental health issue. That might be an issue, but what is a solution? You can't just use it as a buzzword and do it. There has to be more meat to it. So here's the meat. We all have it. We all are for us. So we're going to get together and we're going to talk about going this. And like you're saying, you're going to face your fears. What made you angry? What took you to that? And ask yourself that hard questions. And when I see someone, I'll say, are you doing okay? And like, I've had people reach out to me after when I said that and said, I'm actually not. I'm in a really dark place. And I say, I'm sorry. But I'm glad you're here. But I have their number, and I've texted them different times, just checking in, just saying, hey, just letting you know, I'm glad that we met. So, and it's crazy things like that. So that's the way I can help others heal in it, is finding their own, whatever muse is going to be there to get them, and trying to look at the good instead of just trying to get consumed by all the bad out there.
Yeah, I do the condensed New York version. I'm like, you good? It's like, yeah, you good? And then it all depends on the tone. Or they be like, I just come like, hey, I look at them like, you good? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm like, nah, are you good? So,
Yeah.
and the one character I relate to, because like I suffer from Crohn's disease growing up and being into comics and everything. The one person who I wanted to relate to was Wolverine, because he always healed from everything. So you know what? Like, I want to heal from everything. I've been through a lot of things, and life wasn't easy growing up in that time, especially in New York. And I'm like, you know, gonna heal from this. And so it was always a character, and even my kids, they always get me like Wolverine stuff and everything like that. So I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, okay, I'll keep my healing. He hasn't healed 100%, and he's gone through many, many things, many, many lifetimes. And, I say, you know what? I'm going to do my thing.
My therapist told me healing's not a zero-sum game. I was like, and we're also the ones that are choosing to heal. We're the ones that are fighting that battle. We're the ones that are trying to get the good strength to move forward. So it is a battle to heal. And it's just like a battle of living. Every day is one. So you're choosing to heal. It's hard work, just like you're choosing to, move through the world. It's hard work.
Absolutely. Now, finally, where can listeners connect with you online, explore your gift of perspective work, your podcast conversations, if they want to go deeper into TBI, music, and healing?
So I'm not the best with my advertising myself, but I have a little link tree at Gifts of Perspective. That it has various interviews I've been in, my podcast with Christina, my article from sameu.org, from Amelia Clark's Foundation, and different speeches and stuff I did. It also has an email. But in there also has important links people might need, like find a trauma center a trauma support group by them. And I am grateful to have this perspective and have a good net and find ways to connect. And I have had people reach out to me, and I was able to connect them to someone local to them or something else that might help them. And so again, that's been really good. Again, to get me where I am, all those hard things, it's been good.
No, I'm the same way. It's for me, I'm just on Instagram. I have my own link tree, and it's like everywhere else is just a little too busy for me. Maybe it's just my my generation, but it's like I go with my speed.
Well, I think it's not just our generation. I think it's also we know things that trigger us in the negative way. I know things I don't like about myself, and when I start seeing them happen, I want to back away. And I think you've expressed to me already in in your reflections on it. So I think that might be the same thing you're going through too. Look at it like that. You don't like certain things about you, so you're choosing things that you enjoy. And when I don't enjoy certain things, I stop them. I'm not on Instagram a lot right now because for some reason it's really volatile, a lot of stuff, but I try to just be careful what I do. I try to watch funny videos, animal videos, stuff like that, and music stuff. I try to just laugh because there's worse crap in the world. Just try to laugh it up.
Tell you, search for puppies for like 1 week on Instagram, you'll change your total algorithm.
Yep, it's true.
Nicholas, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your perspective. Thank you very much for everything that you're doing for whose path that you cross with in your journey as well as theirs. And thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Oscar. I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. That was a great episode. We walked through a crash that should have killed him, a 12-day blackout, multiple surgeries, and the slow, frustrating work of relearning how to see, move, think, and trust his own brain again. We also saw the other side. Music dropping his blood pressure and giving his pain a soundtrack. Tabletop RPGs helping him practice problem-solving and social connection. And peer mentoring at the same rehab hospital where he once lay tied down and unconscious. You're allowed bad days, you're allowed anger, and you're allowed to start over as many times as you need, as long as you keep a tiny bit of hope alive for tomorrow's sunrise. Adelante, siempre, por tu mente, forward, always, for your mind. This is the FYI I Am Damaged podcast.
In a bright green jungle where the tall trees sway, lived a little elephant who felt big fins. Every day Logan loved to splash and play by the riverside, with sometimes wobbly legs made him wanna run and hide. Tummy doing flips like a stormy shaking drum. A tiny voice inside him whispered, what if I can't have fun? Then Brandon the wise monkey smiled from the tree, said, little friend, take a breath, come and sit with me. Feel your feet on the ground, feel your hand on your heart. We're breathing together, that's how courage starts. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe it in slow, let it out with a wish. When my mind feels wiggly like a monkey in the trees, I calm my heart down with my breath and my knees. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Step by step forward through this, scared and no what if. Even when my tummy feels funny and tight, I can still be brave, I can still shine bright. Next day in the jungle they played a game of tag. Logan felt the nervous pull, his body started to drag, but he remembered Brandon and the tools he had inside. Took a deep gentle breath instead of running off to hide. Breathe in the sunshine, breathe out all the fear. Stomped his big elephant feet and felt his courage appear. With the wiggle of his trunk and a laugh so free, whispered to himself, there's a lion heart in me. His friends saw him smiling as he joined in the game. They asked, Logan, what's your secret? You don't look the same. He said, when my thoughts get loud, I don't have to stay small. I breathe and move my body and I stand up tall. I am strong, I am safe, I can do it. on the floor. Let your shoulders soften. You don't need to. Whisper to yourself when the worries rush through. I am strong, I am safe, and I know what to do. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe it in slow, lay it out with a wish. When my mind feels wiggly like a monkey in the trees, like I'm locked down with my breath and my knees. I am strong, I assist, I can do this step by step forward through the skin and know what it is. Logan showed the jungle and I show the world. There's a strong-minded hero in every boy and girl in the bright green jungle. When the stars shine above, brave little hearts fall asleep feeling safe.